In the heart of the storm-lashed night, Mei Lin stood at the edge of her village, a solitary figure illuminated by the harsh flicker of distant lightning. Shadows raced across her face as she watched flames devour the only home she'd ever known. Ash drifted on the wind, sharp and cold. Mei Lin's heart hammered with disbelief and fear. Everything she cherished was slipping through her trembling fingers. Her mother's last words echoed in her mind, binding her soul to a promise she could never refuse. Mei Lin said, "I will find the truth, no matter the cost." The fire roared in answer, its voice cruel and final. With tears tracing lines through soot on her cheeks, Mei Lin turned toward the forbidden mountains beyond the ruins. Grief mingled with a strange awakening resolve, as if the pain itself summoned her toward a destiny she could not yet name. The world behind her was lost, but the world ahead burned with questions she dared not ignore. At the edge of the smoldering ruins, Mei Lin knelt to gather her mother's jade necklace from the mud, its surface cold and heavy in her palm. Her breath came in shallow bursts as she pressed the pendant to her chest, eyes squeezed shut against the memory of her mother's final embrace. The world around her seemed impossibly still, rain hissing over ashes, broken beams crackling. Mei Lin whispered, "I will not let your light be lost in darkness." Grief and guilt mingled, coiling inside her like a serpent. She rose, fingers clutching the necklace so tightly her knuckles whitened. Every step away from the ashes cost her more than she thought she could bear. But she kept moving, one foot after another, the memory of her mother a fragile warmth against the chilling wind. The ruins behind glowed, a wound upon the earth. Mei Lin's resolve was forged in the fire, her tears carried away by the rain. Lightning faded, leaving the village in a silence broken only by the hiss of rain. Mei Lin stepped through the skeletal remains of her home, searching for anything that could be saved. The devastation was complete. Walls scorched, roof caved in, childhood treasures scattered among wet ashes. She paused at the sight of her father's calligraphy scroll, half burned but still bearing his careful characters. "Endurance gives rise to hope." Mei Lin said, "Father, I wish I could be as strong as you." Her voice trembled, but something inside her refused to break. The air was thick with smoke and memory. As she gathered the scroll, a cold wind swept through, stinging her cheeks. She pressed the fragile paper against her chest, carrying a piece of her past toward an uncertain future. In that moment Mei Lin understood. Survival meant remembering, even when everything seemed lost. The rain finally eased, leaving behind a world rinsed raw and new. Mei Lin stood at the edge of the village, gazing back one last time. Shadows lingered among the blackened frames of houses, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and smoke. Villagers moved in the distance, silent and shell-shocked, gathering what little remained. Mei Lin's gaze lingered on the horizon, where the mountains waited, veiled in mist. She said, "I must go where no one else dares." A sense of isolation washed over her, but beneath it stirred a stubborn hope. She tightened her grip on her mother's necklace and her father's scroll, the weight of legacy and loss balancing in her hands. With one final glance at the life she was leaving behind, Mei Lin turned away from the ruins, her silhouette framed against the dawn, and took her first steps toward the unknown. With every step toward the mountains, Mei Lin felt the pain of separation sharpen, but resolve steadied her. The road ahead was slick and treacherous, winding into fog-shrouded forest. She listened to the soft rush of water over stone, the distant cry of a night bird, each sound a thread tying her to the world she must now traverse alone. Mei Lin said, "I will face whatever comes." She glanced at the path ahead, ancient stone steps vanishing into mist. Legends whispered about the forbidden heights. Fear stirred in her chest, yet it was tempered by a flicker of courage kindled in the fire's aftermath. She drew a slow breath, feeling the weight of her promise settle in her bones. Though the way was uncertain, Mei Lin knew she could not turn back. Her journey, to reclaim hope, to find answers, had begun. The wind howled across the scorched fields where once a village stood. Now only ruins and smoke remained. Eshan knelt by a charred tree, his fingers tracing a cracked medallion buried in the ash. The scent of burnt cedar clung to the air, a stubborn reminder of what he'd lost. Grief pulsed through him, heavy and relentless. He clutched the medallion to his chest. "How can there be meaning in this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the wind. The sky offered no answer. Only silence. Behind his eyes, flickers of memory burned, laughter at dusk, warm meals shared, the soft hum of his mother's lullaby. All gone. The villagers had spoken of the fire phoenix, a myth perhaps, but one whispered to appear when souls lost their path. Eshan's heart, numb yet searching, reached for the story, hoping for something beyond ruin. Maybe the myth held truth. Maybe the ashes held a direction. And so, with trembling steps, he rose. That night, Eshan dreamt of fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that reveals. He saw his sister standing among golden reeds, calling his name with eyes full of sorrow. "You didn't protect us," she said, fading like smoke. He awoke with sweat on his brow, breath shallow. He wandered to the temple ruins at the edge of the village. Cracked statues of forgotten deities gazed down with blind eyes. There he found an old monk's journal buried beneath stone, pages brittle, yet ink intact. A passage read, "To cling is to suffer. Even the phoenix must burn before it can fly." The words struck something deep. But anger surged too. "Easy to say, old man," he muttered. "What would you know of losing everything?" Still, he kept the journal. He needed something, anything, to keep the questions alive. Not answers. Just a thread. Eshan wandered farther each day, drawn by voices only he could hear. On the third morning, he arrived at a deserted marketplace. Wooden stalls collapsed under ivy and rust. The air smelled of dust and lost time. As he stepped through, faint echoes danced around him. Laughter, barter, children's songs. His chest tightened. He remembered standing here as a child, tugging at his father's sleeve, begging for sugared almonds. Suddenly, a sound, real, not memory. A woman's chant rose from a shaded corner. He approached cautiously. An old blind herbalist sat cross-legged, grinding seeds with her fingers. "You carry ghosts," she said without looking. "They cling to you." Eshan's breath caught. "How do I let them go?" "You don't, not yet. First you must listen to their stories." And he sat. In a forest glade days later, Eshan came upon a shrine surrounded by prayer flags, fluttering despite the stillness. He stepped inside. Mirrors lined the walls, some cracked, others clear. One showed him as a boy, another as he was now. But one mirror was black. He stared into it and saw his guilt. "You could have saved them," it hissed. "You ran." He punched the mirror. Glass shattered, slicing his hand. Blood dripped onto the floor, red against the stone. He collapsed, breath ragged. A voice not his own whispered from the darkness, "Freedom begins where blame ends." Eshan wept, not for the village, but for the boy inside him who never felt enough. That was the true cage. And in naming it, something shifted. As Eshan left the shrine, he stumbled into a dry ravine. Exhausted, he fell to his knees, body aching, heart raw. Dust clung to his wounds. The sky above glowed with the soft hues of dusk. Then he saw it, a single, brilliant feather glowing with warm light, half buried in the dirt. It shimmered gold and crimson, unmistakably phoenix-like. He reached out slowly, trembling. As his fingers brushed it, a warmth spread through his chest, not comfort, but clarity. Not an answer, but a direction. Perhaps suffering was not a punishment, but a passage. With the feather in hand, and the monk's journal in his satchel, Eshan stood. Behind him lay loss, ahead the unknown. But now he walked not just to escape grief, but to understand it. Eshan followed no map, only the wind and instinct. The phoenix feather, now bound to his satchel, pulsed faintly with heat. Dense jungle swallowed the sun. and tangled roots reached like grasping hands. With each step, sounds grew distant. The world narrowed to breath, bark and rustle. He reached a stone bridge suspended over a chasm of mist. A weathered sign read, "To know the way, forget the way." He hesitated. What if this wasn't the right path? What if it led to nowhere? A child's voice echoed from within the fog. "You already left the road behind." Startled, Eshin glanced around. No one. But something stirred inside him. Doubt dissolved into quiet surrender. He stepped onto the bridge, letting go of the idea of right or wrong. The bridge did not crumble. The mist did not consume him. The path revealed itself only as he walked. The jungle deepened. Vines hung like veils. In a quiet grove, faces appeared, etched into trees, carved from mossy bark, whispering fragments of thought. Eshan turned to one. It wore his mother's smile. Another frowned like his father. More emerged, friends, foes, even strangers, each one a version of someone he'd known, or perhaps imagined. "Who are you?" he asked aloud. "We are your memory," one face answered. "And your fear of being forgotten." "You carry us all," another said, "even those you tried to leave behind." Eshin's hand trembled. He wanted to run. But instead, he knelt and pressed his palm to the bark. "I remember you," he whispered. "But I'm not you." The grove fell silent. One by one, the faces faded. Only the sound of birds remained. At twilight, Eshan reached a wide, still river. Its surface gleamed like glass, undisturbed by wind. No bridge crossed it. Instead, small lotus leaves floated near the shore. He peered into the water and saw not his reflection, but memories, his mistakes, his grief, his rage. Scenes of arguments, of running from the fire, of hiding when courage was needed. He recoiled. But the river offered no judgment, only clarity. From the shore, a voice called. An old man in robes, seated atop a boulder. "Step onto the river," he said. Eshan hesitated. "I'll sink." "You will." The old man nodded. "But only what no longer serves." Heart racing. Eshan placed his foot on the nearest lotus. It held him. One by one he crossed, each step releasing a burden, each leaf a silent acceptance. Halfway across, he began to weep. Beyond the river lay a clearing where an eternal flame danced without fuel. A tall woman in crimson robes stood nearby, watching it as if it told stories only she could hear. "You seek the phoenix," she said without turning. Eshan nodded. "I thought this journey would lead me to it." She faced him, eyes like embers. "The phoenix does not come to those who seek it. It rises only in those who burn." She extended her hand toward the flame. "Enter." Fear paralyzed him. "Will it destroy me?" "It will destroy what you are not." Eshan stepped toward the flame. It flared as if recognizing him. Pain licked at his skin, but so did light. Inside the fire, he saw a younger self, crying alone. He reached out and embraced him. The fire roared, then softened. He emerged, scorched. Yes, but unbroken. The woman was gone. Eshan arrived at an ancient stone temple built into the mountain, doors ajar. Inside, silence, dust and emptiness. No idol. No scroll. Only a hollow echo. He fell to his knees. Was it all for nothing? A whisper answered, not from outside, but within. You looked for the phoenix in the world, but it has always been the space inside you, the fire that survived. He placed the feather on the stone floor. It vanished into flame, then faded. No ashes remained. And in its place, stillness. Presence. The knowing without knowing. He didn't need the phoenix to appear. He had already begun to become it. As dawn broke beyond the temple's threshold, Eshan stepped into the light, not as a seeker, but as one who had seen. Within the mountain temple, Eshan discovered a spiral staircase descending into the earth. Each step echoed, though his feet barely touched stone. At the bottom lay a vast chamber filled with mirrors, each one floating mid-air, glowing faintly. He stepped forward. One mirror shimmered, drawing him close. It showed a version of himself, confident, smiling, admired. But behind the image, Eshan noticed a shadow clinging tightly to its back. Another mirror flickered, revealing a frightened child sobbing in a dark room. A third showed him lashing out in rage, hurting someone he loved. "Are these my past lives?" he whispered. A voice responded not from the room, but from within. "No. These are the lives you live every day when you do not see yourself clearly." The chamber dimmed. Eshan stood still, heart thudding. Then, which one is me? All of them, and none. One mirror cracked as Eshan approached, and from its fractured glass stepped a figure, his own reflection twisted with pain and fury. It lunged. "You ran, you let them die." Eshan staggered back. "I didn't choose that. I couldn't save them." "You didn't try hard enough," the figure snarled. "You still carry their ashes, pretending you're searching for truth when all you want is to escape judgment." Eshan dropped to his knees, trembling. "I failed. Yes, but carrying the guilt hasn't brought them back. It's only buried me beside them." The ghost paused. For the first time, its rage flickered into sorrow. It reached out, then dissolved into light, absorbed back into the mirror. Eshan exhaled, shaking. The room no longer felt hostile. The air changed. He had faced his accuser and found not condemnation, but understanding. At the chamber's center burned a low, silent flame. No smoke, no crackle, only a steady golden glow. Drawn to it, Eshan sat before the fire. The heat did not burn but penetrated deep into his chest. Visions returned. His sister's laughter, the village under stars, his parents singing by candlelight. Then the fire showed the night of the blaze. But this time, it did not stop at the panic or fleeing. He saw something he'd forgotten, shielding a child from debris, leading a trembling elder to safety, carrying water in shaking hands. Amidst fear, there had also been courage. Tears spilled down his cheeks. I remembered only the failure, not the love. The flame flared in answer, rising for a moment, then falling gently. Eshan bowed his head. He had not been a coward. He had simply been human. Eshan stood and turned toward the exit, when a sudden gust swept through the chamber. From above, the phoenix feather he had surrendered in the temple reappeared, drifting down like a star. He caught it. It pulsed with warmth. But now, it was no longer a guide. It was a mirror. In its surface he saw not visions or illusions, but his present self, weary but awake, scarred but whole. This time he didn't cling. He simply held it with quiet reverence. "You were never meant to lead me," he murmured. "Only to remind me." From the chamber walls, the mirrors dissolved. Only light remained. The mountain, once a place of descent, now felt like ascent. And in that silence, Eshan understood. The phoenix was not ahead. It was awakening inside him. Outside the mountain, dawn painted the valley in pink and gold. Eshan descended slowly, the world feeling both familiar and reborn. At the base, a cloaked figure waited beside a pool of still water. No words were exchanged. They sat together as birds stirred in the trees. The figure offered Eshan a small bowl of tea. He accepted. In the pool, Eshan saw his reflection, not distorted, not enhanced. Just himself. "I used to think peace was something to find," he said softly. "Now I think it's what remains when I stop searching." The figure smiled and disappeared like mist. Eshan didn't chase. The path forward lay open, but he didn't need to rush. He had seen the truth. He had seen himself. And that was enough. At the edge of a vast desert plateau, Eshan found the threshold, an ancient gate sculpted from obsidian and fireglass, half sunken in sand. Strange glyphs pulsed faintly on its surface. A dry wind whispered. He knew this place from a recurring dream, the place where he always turned back. But now, something had changed. He did not tremble. Above the gate read, To pass through, carry nothing. He removed his satchel, the journal, even the feather, laying them gently in the sand. The weight gone, he inhaled deeply. But a deeper burden remained. The memory of his sister, the guilt over surviving, the ache of meaning lost. He touched his chest. I have no gifts, only the ashes of what I was. And then, the gate opened. Not with grandeur, but with silence. Path of glowing embers stretched ahead. And Eshan stepped forward, barefoot, unshielded. The ember path wound into a canyon of flame. Fire danced along the stone walls, not wild but alive, watching. The heat pulsed with purpose, like a heartbeat. With each step, old wounds surfaced. He saw visions, the people he had failed, the words he had regretted, the love he had withheld. The flames fed on them, growing higher. Then the voice returned, low and steady, let go. He stopped. If I let go, what remains? Only you. The canyon narrowed. A final flame blocked his way, taller than him, fierce and golden. It flickered, showing his mother, his sister, the fire that consumed them. He stepped into it. Pain roared. But so did memory, truth, and something deeper. Forgiveness. He did not burn. He became light. When the fire receded, Eshan stood alone in a void. No sky, no earth. Only stillness. Even his thoughts had fallen silent. It was not death. It was the space where death and life had no boundary. In the center, a single bowl hovered. Empty. Why? He approached, gazing inside. It reflected nothing, not even him. He reached out, and as his hand passed over it, everything inside him, the guilt, the dreams, the yearning, poured out as invisible light. The bowl remained empty. That emptiness became peace. A faint hum arose, not from the void, but from within. A vibration, warm and whole. He was not hollowed out. He was cleared. He sat cross-legged in the dark. For the first time he was simply being. Light bloomed from the darkness, not sudden, but like sunrise over a forgotten land. Out of the stillness a shape took form, wings of flame, eyes like molten stars. The fire phoenix emerged, not as beast, but as brilliance. It did not speak. It circled Eshan, its warmth neither painful nor proud. Then it hovered, head bowed. Eshan rose slowly, tears falling, not from sorrow but release. He bowed in return. In that shared silence, something passed between them. The phoenix broke apart into a million sparks and entered his body, not burning but fusing. Wings of light flared from his back. His breath became flame. His presence radiated calm. He did not become the phoenix. He became himself, illuminated. Eshan stood once more at the desert's edge. The gate behind him had vanished. The wind was warm, not harsh but alive. Villagers had begun to return to the lands below, rebuilding the homes he once knew. Children laughed in the distance. A woman wept joyfully near a growing field. He walked through quietly. Some recognized him. Others only felt a stillness as he passed. He carried no title, no prophecy, only peace. The phoenix was not a savior. It was a mirror of rebirth, lit in the hearts of those who chose to face the flame. One child approached him, eyes wide. "Are you the firebird?" Eshan smiled gently. "No, but I've walked through its light." He placed his hand on the child's shoulder, and a spark passed. Not fire, but courage. Then he turned, walking onward. At the heart of the once ruined village, a garden bloomed. Not one from memory, but new, seeded by those who returned, watered by shared effort and silent grief. Eshan knelt among children planting flowers, guiding their hands, smiling as they laughed. He no longer needed to be the center. He simply became part of the soil. An elder approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You carry no fire now." Eshan looked up. "I carry peace. Fire only helped me find it." The elder nodded. "Then plant it here." Together they placed a small seed in the center of the garden. It was not magical. It did not glow. But as the wind passed, it stirred the leaves like a blessing. Eshan didn't wish for anything anymore. He simply tended what was growing. Eshan visited the ruined bell tower on the hill, the place where the village once signaled danger or celebration. Its bell lay cracked, silent since the fire. He didn't try to fix it. Instead, he sat inside its shadow, eyes closed, letting the wind pass through the hollow metal. In that silence he heard more than he ever did when the bell rang: laughter from nearby homes, the soft hum of bees, the rhythm of life returning. A child climbed beside him. "Why doesn't it ring anymore?" "Because we don't need it to," Eshan replied. "The silence tells us what matters." He handed the child a small flute made of reed. "But if you wish, you can make your own song." The child smiled and began to play. That evening, a fire was lit at the village's center, not for fear, but for warmth and gathering. People circled it, sharing food, stories and glances filled with shared memory. Eshan sat at the edge, watching rather than speaking. The fire no longer reminded him of loss, but of light carried forward. Its flames danced quietly, no longer needing to shout. A young woman approached him, eyes soft. "Are you the one who walked into the canyon of fire?" "I was," he said, "but I returned without needing to be anything." She offered a cup of tea. "Then, sit with us." He joined them. No words were needed. Around the fire, grief and joy coexisted in stillness. The flame was no longer a lesson. It was simply warmth. By the riverside, Eshan built a small raft with parchment birds folded from prayer paper. Each bore a name: his mother, his sister, friends, even those he'd never known. Not to summon them back, but to honor their presence in his journey. He placed them gently onto the water, lighting a candle on each. The river carried them slowly downstream, flickering like stars. He did not cry. His grief had become a thread in the fabric of peace. A child released one last paper bird. "For someone I miss." Eshan nodded. "Then let the river carry it all." And they watched together as the water mirrored the stars, a quiet sky floating past them. At sunrise, Eshan wandered beyond the village again, but this time not in exile. He stood at a high ridge and gazed over the valley. No destination called to him. No fire pushed him forward. He smiled. The horizon didn't promise answers. It didn't need to. Peace was no longer a place to find. It was something he brought with him, carried in stillness, in breath, in being. Behind him, laughter rose. A boy ran up and handed him a single stone with a symbol drawn in chalk, the shape of a bird. Eshan turned it in his hand, then placed it in his pocket. The child asked, "Will you stay?" "I'm always home," Eshan said. "Even when I walk." And with that he began to walk, not away from something, but into everything. In the forest clearing where legends once spoke of the phoenix return, Eshan arrived alone. At the center stood a carved stone pedestal, shaped like a throne, worn smooth by centuries. But it held nothing. Birdsong filled the air. He approached expecting awe, perhaps a final vision. But there was only wind, light and trees gently swaying. No firebird. No miracle. And yet, he smiled. He bowed before the empty pedestal. "The throne was never for a god," he whispered. "It was for the silence within us all." He sat beside it, not on it, and closed his eyes. No need to conquer the fire. No need to become more. The journey ended not in a blaze, but in breath. The empty throne remained, whole, untouched. And that was enough. As the wind stirred, a single golden feather descended slowly from the canopy above. Eshan opened his eyes and caught it effortlessly, this time not as a sign but as a gift. He didn't ask what it meant. He didn't need it to lead him. Instead, he placed it atop a stone cairn nearby, an offering not to the phoenix, but to all seekers who would follow, who would burn, who would heal. Then he stepped back, watching it glint in the morning sun. The forest accepted it like breath accepts stillness. No flame, no noise. Just presence. Eshan lay on his back near a quiet pond, watching clouds drift above. He listened, not for signs, not for guidance, but for life itself. The sound of rippling water, insects in the grass, his own steady breathing. Each inhale was a miracle. Each exhale, a return. He had once sought answers in fire, in myth, in suffering. Now he saw truth in moss, in wind, in the space between thoughts. A dragonfly landed briefly on his hand. He did not move. No revelation came. No need for one. What was, simply was. And in that gentle quiet, the world exhaled with him. At the sight of the old fire, where once only charred earth remained, now bloomed wildflowers. Eshan returned not as a pilgrim, but as a witness. The ground did not mourn. It had transformed. He crouched and touched a blossom. From ash to bloom, he said softly. Nothing lost, only changed. A group of children played nearby, chasing wind, unaware of the history beneath their feet. That too was peace, not needing to remember everything, but being free enough to live. He rose and left without marking the place. It needed no shrine. The phoenix had never left. It had simply learned to grow. At twilight, Eshan lit a single candle in his small, simple dwelling, not to ward off darkness, but to honor it. The flame flickered calmly. He sat before it, hands resting lightly on his knees. There was no ritual, no audience, just presence. The fire reflected in his eyes, not as something to fear or chase, but as something quietly understood. He whispered, "May the flame within guide those who walk the silence." Outside stars appeared, unconcerned, infinite, watching. Eshan breathed in, then out, as the candle glowed. Not all who burn are lost. Some become light,